"Happy birthday, darling," Laura said, her voice gentle as Andrew slowly woke from a deep sleep. Blinking as his eyes adjusted to the light, he saw her standing beside the bed, holding 2 mugs of coffee. She set one on the bedside table before walking around to her side of the bed, slipping under the covers again. "Old man," she teased with a giggle, "what do you want to do today?" Andrew smiled, still half-dazed. Though it was only his 40th birthday, he felt as though he had plenty of life left. "I'll ignore that," he said with mock indignation. "How about we go out for an early dinner and then see that new show in town? I've heard good things." Laura's eyes lit up. "Great minds think alike," she laughed, handing him an envelope. Andrew opened it to reveal 2 tickets to the show he had just mentioned. "But that's hours away," she added, snuggling closer. "I'm in no rush to get up." Andrew turned to face her, noticing a neatly wrapped parcel with a bow on her bedside table. "Is that for me?" he asked. "Oh, yes," Laura said, her voice soft. "I wanted to get you something a little different this year, something memorable. I hope you like it." Andrew, never one to take his time with presents, ripped through the wrapping in seconds, leaving paper scattered around. He saw the word Louboutin printed on the box and paused. "I didn't know they made shoes for men." "They definitely do," Laura said, her tone light but with a hint of nervousness. "For you, I think." Andrew opened the box and pulled out a pair of shoes. The unmistakable red soles confirmed their origin, but Andrew was confused. These shoes, with their French stiletto heels, were not what he expected in the men's department. "I don't get it," Andrew stammered. "These aren't for me." Laura gently pointed to the size on the box. "They're not for me either. They're your size." Andrew's face flushed with frustration. "Why would you buy me something like this?" he snapped. "Do you think I'm—" "Of course not," Laura quickly interrupted. "But if you don't want them, I'll take them back for a full refund." "There's just one thing." Andrew cut her off. "No way," he said firmly. "If you think I'd—" "I don't think you'll get what you expect," Laura said, her voice calm but firm. "I think you'll discover something about yourself that you never imagined. These shoes might change your life. But, if you really don't want them, I'll take them back on one condition. You just have to try them on first." Andrew hesitated. The shoes were expensive, and while money wasn't an issue, he didn't like the thought of wasting it. But Laura's words intrigued him. After a long pause, he spoke. "All right," he said reluctantly. "I'll try them on. But before I do, I want to know why you bought them and what you meant by what you said earlier." Laura smiled, her eyes soft. "It's a deal," she whispered, kissing him gently on the lips. She pulled back and asked, "Have you ever tried something completely different?" "What do you mean? Have I ever worn women's clothing?" Andrew replied firmly, then paused to reconsider. "Well, apart from Freshers' Week at university, when we wore skirts and stuffed balloons in our shirts to raise money for charity." "I bet you looked quite the sight," Laura chuckled. "But that's not what I meant." "Well, in that case, definitely not," Andrew responded quickly. "Okay, then," Laura said, leaning in. "Have you ever wanted to, or even just thought about cross-dressing?" Andrew hesitated before answering. "Not really, no." His response was less certain this time. Laura didn't say anything at first but simply watched him for a moment. Andrew could feel himself start to blush. "I thought so," Laura said, a playful glint in her eye. "Now we're getting somewhere." "No, we're getting nowhere fast," Andrew shot back, frustrated. "I've had enough." He climbed out of bed, grabbed his dressing gown, and left the room, heading downstairs. Laura smiled to herself, deciding to give Andrew some space. Half an hour later, she walked into the kitchen. "Look, Andrew, I'm sorry I stormed out like that," Laura said. "This is all getting a bit ridiculous. All I wanted was a nice, quiet birthday with you, and instead, you get me a present that's way off the mark and mess with my emotions." "Okay, no more games," Laura continued, putting the shoes on the kitchen table. "What do you think of these? What would you say if I bought them for myself, Not for you. Andrew thought for a moment before responding. Honestly, I think they're gorgeous. Everything about them is perfect. And, although I was shocked at the price, I know once you put them on, they'd be worth every penny. I just wish you'd bought them for yourself. Oh, don't worry, Laura laughed. I bought myself a pair, too. There's no way I was going to let you have all the fun. She paused. But anyway, let's get back on track. I've got another question for you. If you weren't married to me, which of my friends would you ask out on a date? Andrew answered without hesitation, Sion. He said it almost too quickly, before realizing his potential mistake. I thought so, Laura laughed. But why? Andrew, realizing he could dig himself into a hole with his next words, chose his response carefully. Well, we both know she's attractive, and she's easy to talk to. Laura raised an eyebrow. Okay, but why did you make a beeline for Lucy when we all got together a few weeks ago? Lucy's quiet, not always easy to talk to, and, well, she's not exactly what I'd call remarkable. The only thing memorable about her that night was that she was wearing a pair of Louboutins, just like these. Was she? Andrew asked, surprised. I didn't even notice. I think you did, Laura replied with a knowing smile. Every time I looked at you, you seemed to be sneaking glances at her feet. Andrew shifted uncomfortably, and Laura gently took his hand. First of all, I don't see anything wrong if a guy wants to explore his feminine side from time to time. I mean, when I'm feeling less feminine, I'll put on jeans, a loose shirt, skip the makeup, and you'd never know the difference. You mean you don't like being a woman? Andrew asked, more confused than ever. No, I absolutely love being a woman, Laura replied. But I have a choice, and men don't. That's true, Andrew agreed, still trying to understand. But why bring this up? Taking an interest in one of your friend's shoes doesn't mean I'm, well, you know. Of course not, Laura laughed. But it got me thinking about all those times we've gone shopping together, and you've practically begged me to buy shoes that are completely impractical. And then I remember all the documentaries we've watched, and how you've just sat there in silence. Any other program, and you would have shared your thoughts by now, Laura said. Then I thought about the times I've gone into my wardrobe and noticed things out of place. I've never worn any of your clothes, Andrew declared quickly. I believe you, Laura replied, her voice soft. But honestly, I still don't know if I'm right or wrong about you. I just want to give you the chance to find out who you really are, not just who you think I want you to be. Now, why don't we go upstairs and try the shoes on? As they walked to the bedroom, Andrew thought about what Laura had said. He knew he'd been caught, especially about Lucy's shoes. Sion had looked nice that night, but Lucy had looked incredible in those shoes, and he couldn't seem to stop staring at her. Laura was right. He had often encouraged her to buy shoes that were, in hindsight, completely impractical. Those shoes now sat untouched at the back of the wardrobe. Andrew admitted to himself that the idea of exploring gender boundaries had always intrigued him, so much so that, on occasion, he had taken one of Laura's dresses and held it up to himself, wondering what it would be like to wear it. Yet, he always carefully returned everything to its place. How did Laura know things had been moved? Sit on the bed, Laura instructed. Andrew obeyed. Laura placed the shoes on the floor and told him to slip them on. He tried to put on the right shoe, but it wouldn't fit. They're too small, he muttered. I knew this was a bad idea. Laura chuckled and opened her bedside drawer. You need these, she said, handing him a small packet. It looked like a pair of black sheer hold-ups from the picture on the front. Andrew's instincts screamed to stop, but a deal was a deal. If he wanted Laura to take them back, he had to keep his word. He carefully opened the packet and slowly rolled the hold-ups up his legs, then slipped his feet into the shoes. This time, they fit. Okay, Laura said, standing and walking toward the door. You've kept your promise. Why don't you go admire yourself in the mirror? And if you want to go a little further, feel free to take whatever you want from my wardrobe. The clothes on the right are from before my diet, so they'll be a little bigger and should fit you. I don't want to embarrass you more than I already have, so I'll leave you alone. Just come downstairs when you're done, and we'll return the shoes." About 30 minutes later, Laura heard Andrew coming down the stairs. He was moving more slowly than usual, but she quickly realized why when she heard the distinctive click of high heels on the hardwood floor. "So, what do you think? Do I make a convincing woman?" Andrew asked, standing in front of her. Laura looked him over. The red dress he had chosen was simple but feminine, hanging just above the knee. The curves that seemed to have appeared out of nowhere filled out the top of the dress perfectly. The black hold-ups and stilettos made his legs look unmistakably feminine, and with a few of Laura's bracelets and a necklace, the transformation was complete. Her husband now looked every bit the attractive woman, at least from the neck down. Laura couldn't help but laugh, but Andrew's expression dropped. "I think you make a lovely woman," Laura said, "but I think your face still needs a bit of work. Shall we get started, or do you want to take the shoes back?" Andrew sighed, then chuckled. "Well, we might as well finish what we've started and take a few photos before we do." He agreed, and so they headed back to the bedroom. Laura seated him in front of the dressing table mirror and began applying a layer of foundation, followed by various cosmetics that slowly transformed his face into the features of a quite attractive woman. "Now turn around and face me," she said after about 30 minutes. Andrew did as he was told, and Laura reached up to the top shelf of her wardrobe, pulling down a box. "I always knew I'd need this again," Laura laughed, retrieving a dark blonde wig that had last seen the light of day at a fancy dress party 10 years ago. She shook the wig out and carefully placed it over Andrew's short hair, spending a few moments adjusting it. After a minute, she stepped back and admired her work. "Finished," she exclaimed. "Go take a look in the mirror." Andrew stood up unsteadily and walked toward the full-length mirror. He wasn't wearing his glasses, so it wasn't until he got closer that things started to come into focus. When he finally stopped, he gasped as he saw the reflection before him. A woman, a beautiful woman he didn't recognize, but somehow felt he did. A woman he now felt a strange connection to, a woman he wanted to get to know better. He looked down at his feet, where the shoes he had earlier rejected now seemed to fit him perfectly. The irritation and anger they had caused earlier were replaced by a strange sense of contentment. Laura's earlier words echoed in his mind, "More pleasure than you ever thought possible." The sense of bliss he felt now was beyond anything he had ever experienced. He couldn't argue with that. He'd never imagined seeing himself as a woman, let alone enjoying the experience. And as for those shoes changing his life, well, it was too soon to know where this path might lead. But for now, he was content to savor the moment. He didn't even try to understand how Laura seemed to know things about him he hadn't realized. He just knew it was part of what made her special and the reason he'd married her in the first place. As Laura had promised, this was indeed a day he would never forget. Don't forget to join me on Patreon for exclusive content,